Thanks, Doug. Our first presentation today comes from Ecopreneur EU. It's an association that advocates for a sustainable economy and supports European businesses achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. He's an internationally recognised circular economy expert. Please welcome to the stage Arthur ten Wolde.
Thanks for the kind introduction, and also thanks for the organization for the opportunity to speak here today about policies to create a circular plastics economy. My name is Arthur ten Wolde, and I am the recently appointed Executive Director of Ecopreneur. I've been working for Ecopreneur for a number of years as a circular economy expert. And about Ecopreneur, it's probably not an organization that you already know. We are the European Federation of Sustainable Business, and we represent about 3,000 SMEs and a few dozens of large companies in 5 member states. So our direct members are business networks. For instance, here in the Netherlands, MVO Nederland, which means CSR Netherlands, is a business network, a green business network, by the way, all of them, that has 2,000 company members, and so also the others in Germany, Austria, and also Belgium and France have similar networks, and altogether, so 3,000 in all kinds of markets. So these are mostly producing companies, that means services and products on the market. Some of them are also working on waste, but the focus is on delivering sustainable and circular products and services. So, as was already said, our focus, our objective is to create a sustainable economy. To begin with in Europe, which is a huge challenge, of course. We also do not want to do it at the expense of other economies outside Europe. So a sustainable economy in general is what we want. And for this, we mostly do advocacy at the European level and at the national level when required. And we are also assisted by this by 5 out of this membership of 3,000, 5 companies that are particularly dedicated. Target, Werner und Merz from Germany, Rockwool Interface, and Remondis. And in this, and for this today, the subject of plastics, Werner und Merz is of particular interest because they deliver their detergent products in plastic bottles that are 100% recycled and 100% recyclable already. So out of the experience of these 3,000 companies that are already successful delivering green products and services, what are the 3 main barriers that they have come up with in daily life? Well, the first of them is a lack of demand pool for circular products and services. This is a fundamental barrier, of course. So they have located the niches where you can actually be successful. But to further grow, this is a real barrier. It's the major barrier in our experience for creating a circular economy. The second barrier that they encounter is the lack of transparency throughout the value chain. So if you want to become circular and sustainable, you need to know what are you buying from your suppliers, and they generally cannot tell you in detail. That's the second one. And the third one for SMEs, and we represent lots of SMEs, access to funding is also a fundamental barrier. So how do we view a circular economy? Well, this is not entirely serious maybe, but this is how you can imagine it. So the green arrow represents the maybe like 5 or 10,000 companies in Europe that are really striving for circular products and services. So they follow the green vision. But the orange arrow depicts the market forces, and they're all pulling you to the other goal, the goal of the linear products and services. And this is why time and time management makes the decisions to go for the linear option because they want to see the profit, and that's logical. But you can do it, but it's difficult. What we want is to tilt the whole playing field, because it's not a level playing field at all. We want it to be tilted so that the green vision that by now everybody wants, I mean, European citizens are now so concerned about climate change that this is no longer a debate. The debate has become, how do we do it? And we've been advocating already for 3 years that you can do this with procurement measures, with price incentives and regulation. And for today, if you remember anything from our presentation, please remember that pricing, that is our main, what we advocate. And if you could do this, then the vision and the market forces would go in the same direction. So what do we stand for to accelerate the circular economy? Well, it's 4 things. The first of all is that we would like to see the European Commission and the governments in the European Union to create circular hubs in all member states. And what do we mean by a circular hub? Well, in the Netherlands we already have one, in several other countries also, like Scotland. It means that there is some kind of public-private cooperation, partnership of all kinds of services to help companies and municipalities on how to become circular. And this includes also access to finance for SMEs. This is important because if you create examples of companies that show that it can be done and that you can actually make money with it too, then you get enthusiasm, and then the message starts to land that the circular economy is actually good for your economy because it brings you profit, it brings you jobs, it brings a contribution to the GDP. And that is also important at the EU level, because in the past years, many excellent proposals have been formulated by the European Commission, who got a prize for that too, and also by the European Parliament, that were maybe even more proactive. And then they landed at the Council, and there they were dismissed or watered down because there's insufficient support from many member states. Well, because what we really want is procurement. So that's why we are advocating that the European Commission and member states launch a massive training program by Circular, how to do circular procurement. It can be done, but it's not so easy. So there are trainings available, scale them up, train the trainer, etc., and make them also a part of national green deals on circular procurement. Has been very successful in the Netherlands, also in Flanders, which is a completely different culture, also already in Baltic states, in Paris. So copy with pride. I would invite all governments and also companies there. Then make circular cheaper than linear. That's the real objective, actually. Because if you make the circular cheaper, for instance, by a VAT fee that is VAT tariff that is lower, then you can nudge consumers to the circular option. And right now, in many cases, the circular option is slightly more expensive. You can also do this by a tax shift. We advocate a tax shift really fundamentally from tax on labor to taxing resources, environmental impact. And also, and very important for this presentation today, this discussion, is extended producer responsibility. For plastics, for plastic waste, this is already existing and working, and it could be improved. And finally, to ban the worst products from the market, because even though we want pricing as a preferred policy option, you cannot do everything, and sometimes it's really necessary and also much easier to ban the worst from the market. And for this, we are in favor of expanding the Eco-Design Directive to resources. And together with Werner and Merz, I'm now actively advocating also in Brussels for specific legislation in the guidelines. I'll try to speed up a bit. So this is what we've been working on. We've been working on the ban on single-use plastics, which we were very happy that came about this proposal for the VAT that is now on the table of the Council to open up the VAT directive, the waste rules in Europe. And what we have accomplished so far is that our cornerstones that I just mentioned are actually in many of the strategy papers, like the Single-Use Plastics Directive. That was already a real measure and just the beginning. So we want this to be scaled up by the next European Commission and Parliament to really implement all these ideas. For instance, in the EU guidelines for extended producer responsibility. I think I'll skip the rest of this one, comes along. So for plastics policy, what do we recommend? Well, first of all, we welcome the plastic strategy and the Single-Use Plastics Directive. By the way, is everybody familiar with the Single-Use Plastics Directive? Who is not familiar with it? Or who you're not? Okay. Well, it is a directive which states that specific types of plastic products, like straws, plastic straws, are actually forbidden on the European market because there is a viable alternative, and some others will be phased out or scaled down. So that's a concrete measure that actually surprised a lot of people because they were not noticing what was going on. So I think people are now more on the alert. So we want more of that for other markets too, and for plastics also more. Also, we would to incentivize the reuse and recycling of post-consumer plastics by eco-modulation of fees. And actually, this is our most important message, because this is the pricing. Now, if you look at extended producer responsibility, the fees are based on the costs of waste management. But this is no real incentive to produce less waste. It's just like you pay and then you can pollute, or at least you make it recycle. But we want actually everything to go down. And if you are basing the fee on, for instance, did you redesign your plastic bottle to be fully recyclable, and then you get a lower fee, or even better, if it contains recycled content, then you pay a lower fee, or maybe you get a bonus, then you create real incentives. And this is already being done in France, so there are already examples. Also, we would like to ensure with this that products are simplified. If you simplify the mixture of materials, for instance, then you can recycle them better, sort them better. This should be a new like a guidance for designing plastic bottles, for instance. And also address the potential for reducing the use of plastics in the first place. And this was not in the plastic strategy. And our companies think that that should be in there, because just reminding you, I'm speaking on behalf of business here, right? These are the green businesses that want the rest to follow, and that want to also be rewarded for their own efforts. But most of all, others to follow. Well, I think this is maybe enough about this sheet. Specifically on extended producer responsibility, we think that the EU framework cannot rely on voluntary pledges. By the way, we are very happy with the success. They were already mentioned by the first speaker. So we are very happy that large companies such as Coca-Cola made these pledges, and they're really walking the walk now, because I get calls from companies that are on the producing side. Where do I find this recycled PET now and in the medium term? So these pledges have really made a change. But we think that the EPR system in Europe should be improved further. And there is a lot to improve. Right now in Europe, also our companies are complaining that you pay, but you have no guarantee that the material will actually be entering the European market again. So this should be improved as well. And we would also like to these measures to follow the waste hierarchy, so that closed-loop recycling gets the highest bonus, so that you actually trigger market mechanisms to create more demand, and also a higher availability of high-quality materials. So now my question is, how much time do I have? 30 seconds. Okay, I'll just show the sheets and tell what more we have done. First of all, we have a circularity check on our website, Ecopreneur EU, for which you can use for any product or service to see if it's circular and how circular is it. So this is called the circularity check. Then we have a report on our website called Circular Fashion Advocacy. And this is a detailed program for the next 11 years on to create circular fashion. And as you know, this contains a lot of plastics. This is then for later. These are the 5 pillars that we see for fashion. It also includes innovation policies and trade policies and voluntary actions to repeat the success of the plastic pledges. But then for fashion, microplastic release should be solved. Again, these incentives that I already mentioned. Regulation is also necessary for fashion. You cannot do everything just with the voluntary pledges and with pricing. Trade is important because these are international markets, voluntary actions. And what we are now working on the next year is to create an agenda that is shared by the stakeholders. So that's what we're doing now with CNA Foundation, because that is the organization that has given us a grant for this. We also have a report which might interest you about the circular economy in all member states. So this gives a detailed picture, where is every member state, all 28 of them, and what are our recommendations to move on. So that's also on the web, with detailed recommendations also to the EU. And in summary, this is our most important one: pricing, pricing, pricing. Thank you.